Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down House of the Dragon. Season 2 is now officially here, and throughout this video we're going to be going through it all. I've gone back through the book and reread all the histories to hopefully bring you as in-depth a breakdown on the episode as I can. This will contain Easter eggs, hidden details, and changes from the work, as well as where we think things are gonna go. As always, we'll be saving spoilers until the end of the video, so I'll give you a heads up before that spoilers are coming, in case you know nothing. If you enjoy it, please hit the thumbs up and swear allegiance by hitting subscribe. With that out of the way, huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into House of the Dragon.
They killed the boy.
Spoiler alert.
Now before we even start the episode, we have to discuss this brand new title sequence. This is the chronicle of the Targaryen lineage, and we start off with the tale of old Valyria. The capital of the Valyrian freehold, this used to be the home of the dragons. Now because of their superiority in warfare, Valyria had conquered a lot of Essos. Its empire had taken down all its opposing nations, and it ruled over half the planet. Feels weird saying planet in Game of Thrones, but moving on. And things unfortunately wouldn't last, as the kingdom was rocked by a volcanic eruption. Known as Doom, this wiped out old Valyria and killed a large number of the dragons. Fleeing from it were the Targaryens and Valyrians, who then travelled out to Westeros. That's what we see in this introduction, with dragons dropping out of the sky. We then get a shot of 3 dragons and their riders, which are Aegon and his wife's sister brides. Bit weird, but marrying your sister was cool in Valyria, so the guy decided to wed them both and keep the bloodline pure. Their dragons are Balerion the Black Dread, whose skull we've seen in King's Landing. This dragon used to belong to Viserys, and alongside it are Visenya and Rhaenys. Visenya rode Vhagar, who we've met in the show, and she also wielded Darksister. That's the sword that Daemon now carries, with Vhagar belonging to Aemond. Meraxes was who belonged to Rhaenys, with her name later being given to a character in the series. Although Westeros was seen as being worse in this channel, Aegon saw it as an opportunity. Carrying out Aegon's conquest, he quickly took over the 7 kingdoms and then established his own. No match for the dragons. We see this in the intro and watch as the houses bend their knees. In the middle of these is Torrhen Stark, who we hear about later on in the episode. Torrhen is known as the king who knelt, with this summing up his place in history. He's a figure Jace uses to get Cregan to swear himself again, though he is a bit back and forth. It's funny how this is summing out echoes throughout history with the Starks, as Jon of course end up kneeling to Dany. I believe in this opening we also see Harrenhal, which was a key location that the conquest seized. In there lived Harrenhal, or as he was nicknamed, Harren the Black. He refused to surrender to Aegon, and Balerion burned the location, hence why it's in ruins now. This then led to the establishment of the Targaryens at King's Landing, which we see in the mural. We then get a depiction of the Iron Throne and a figure with a sword in his neck. Aegon died of a stroke at 63, so I don't think that this is that. However, we do know that he had sons in Aenys and Maegor. Aenys was initially the king, but he was seen as a weakling. Fleeing to Dragonstone and apparently dying of cramps, he was then replaced by Maegor the Cruel. A complete tyrant, it's said he died on the Iron Throne after injuring himself on it. Now, the legends state that those who aren't fit to sit there will be cut and killed by the throne itself. This is something that we saw with Viserys, and his disease likely stemmed from infections brought on by him cutting himself. Maegor appears to be surrounded by Blackfire and Dreamfire, which then takes us to Jaehaerys' rule. He established a rule of peace and prosperity, which we see depicted in the Bag of Gold. Next to it is also the pointed star that belongs to the Faith of the Seven. This religion is prevalent throughout the realm, with this showing the ushering in of it. Next we cut to him announcing his heir at Harrenhal. This is how the first season opened, and we then get shots of notable events from it. This includes Alicent rocking up to Rhaenyra's wedding wearing green. The High Tower banner is burned green when announcing war, and this highlighted the characters were here for a fight. We then cut to a depiction of the Civil War, with the 2 thrones being shown. Aegon II sits on the Iron Throne, and he also wears the Conqueror's crown. On the opposite side of this, we have Rhaenyra, who now sits on the throne at Dragonstone. As we pull out, we can see 2 hands, with them being green and black. This represents the 2 sides, with this being a tapestry that showcases the history so far.
Would you like to see the tapestry?
Nah, not really, mate, but a great intro, and I was surprised they changed it as much as they did. Now that takes us into the title, and we'll then break down the episode after a shout out from our sponsors. Now this video is sponsored by MyHeritage. These videos always have me looking back into the past for Easter eggs, and MyHeritage lets you look into your own history. Today, I received my DNA testing kit result, which was super simple to use. You just activate the kit online, swab your cheek, and then post it off. This will then help to reveal a percentage breakdown of your own origin story. My heritage look across 42 different ethnicities and 2,000 geographical regions. They're committed in their privacy policy and don't share or license any of your genetic data. My results are just about to come in, so let's go to the future and see what happened. Go to the future. Right, we're just about to start and have a look at my ethnicity. Okay, so according to this, I'm 58.7% Irish, Scottish and Welsh, 31.3% English, 7% Finnish, no idea about that, and 3% Italian. Just looking through this as well, I've got a couple different people on here. We're gonna have to censor it because I don't want them getting bombarded going, why is your cousin Kevin spoilers? Why did he spoil Avengers Endgame for me? But yeah, I've got lots of different people on here, like a second cousin, a parent's second cousin. It's pretty crazy looking over this whole stuff. Wow, just looking at it here, there's 1,442 different pages of people that are related to me. I'm gonna be bloody the most popular guy in school all of a sudden. Yeah, that's crazy that. That's just blown away, like, how many different people are in. I know it's a bit weird watching someone else's DNA results, but whenever I've watched ones in the past, I've been like, oh, that's cool. But going through it yourself, that's really interesting. And yeah, just kind of painting a broader picture of exactly where I come from. Had no idea I was Finnish, but I'll take it. You guys are great. Now, the great thing about my heritage is that it's more than just your DNA as well, and it obviously offers a complete comprehensive family history. On top of that, the kits also come with the option for a 30-day free trial of their best subscription for research on your family history. Make sure you check out the 30-day complete free trial for the best value, and with that, you'll also get access to all the photo tools and deep nostalgia. All you have to do to deep dive into your DNA is click my link in the description and use the code spoilers to get free shipping. You can also scan the QR code on screen right now and that will take you straight to the site. Huge thank you again to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. Make sure you click that link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now and get that discount using the code spoilers. Thank you. Now we begin with a shot of a raven flying through a forest. These messenger birds are here to unite the realm and get as many forces to the house's sides as possible. The book says, on the seventh day, a cloud of ravens burst forth from the towers of Dragonstone to bring Lord Aegon's word to the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. To the 7 kingdoms they flew, to the citadel of Old Town, to lords both great and small. All carried the same message. From this day forth, there would be but one king in Westeros. Those who bent the knee to Aegon of House Targaryen would keep their lands and titles. Those who took up arms against him would be thrown down, humbled, and destroyed. Ooh, bit rough. Now, when this shot was shown in the trailer, we cut from it immediately to a dragon. This was clearly for a reason, with it highlighting the escalation within the realm. These birds are the beginning of the war that will eventually lead into the Battle of the Dragons. The escalation will cause everything to burn, and it all ascends directly from this moment. Going to Winterfell, we hear the voiceover of Cregan Stark as we roll into the kingdom. There's also the Stark sigil on the back of the shields, and we see wolves and that classic black Stark armor. There's also lots of little visual nods to things that have come or will come down the line. There's a little kid as we pan in who looks a bit like a young Bran. There's also a guy with his back to us and long black hair who is a bit reminiscent of Jon Snow. We also see a woman to the right with red hair who from this angle looks a lot like Catelyn. We then hear of the Night's Watch and how Torrhen Stark proposed to Stark would take the black and help guard the wall. In the main show, this was of course Jon Snow, with it being depicted as an honour. It's a great way to start the season, especially since we didn't get a focus on the Starks last time. Cregan inherited Winterfell from his father Rickon, who we actually saw during season 1. At the end of episode 1, we had the Lord swearing allegiance to Rhaenyra, and amongst these was Rickon Stark, with his son now carrying that on. So it's sort of reflecting that first episode, and we have this idea mirroring throughout the entry. Season 1 episode 1 had the death of Aemma and also her child. Kids dying is a big part of this one, with that death at the end being something that's probably going to break the internet. Lucerys' funeral also happens as well, and that echoed the funeral of Aemma in episode 1. That funeral was where Rhaenyra ordered the burning of her mother and her brother's corpses, and again they're having to do the same thing. Now about Winterfell, the book says, Cregan had come into his lordship at 13 upon the death of his father Lord Rickon at 121 AC. During his minority, his uncle Bennett had ruled the Northers region, but in 124 AC, Cregan turned 16, only to find his uncle slow to surrender his power. Relations between the two grew strained as the young lord chafed under the limits imposed upon him by his father's brother. Finally, in 126 AC, Cregan Stark rose up, imprisoned Bennett and his 3 sons, and took the rule of the North into his own hands. Soon after, he wed Lady Rhaenyra, a beloved companion since childhood, only to have her die in 128 AC while giving birth to a son and heir whom Cregan named Rickon after his father. Now, as we get to the wall, we see the lift moving up and finally catch up with Jacaerys. At the end of Season 1, we've seen him going out as an envoy, but only those familiar with the book were aware of what happened. He's being turned by Cregan, who's wielding the sword Ice. This appeared in the original series, with it being brandished by Ned. It's laying the groundwork for things to come, and I'm interested to see where they go with him in the series. Hey, might be the first bloody Stark to keep an oath, eh? Looking at you, Jon Snow. Looking at you, Robb. You promised Walder Grey you'd marry his daughter, mate. Sansa did say a Stark had never forgotten an oath, up until this point though, which did come into play here.
There has never lived a Stark who forgot an oath, and with House Stark, the North will follow.
And that's something that Cregan hammers home too. As we know, Stark's not keeping oaths has disastrous consequences down the line, and I love how it's doing what I think a prequel should, which is foreshadowing things to come. Cregan talks about when Jacaerys and Alicent visited, who are 2 characters that we also saw in the intro. Their dragons refused to cross the wall, which highlights the danger that lies beyond it. The book never really touched upon the Night King, but retroactively they can now add this in. It's a great way to kick things off, but it's broken up by the news of Lucerys' death. Now from here we cut to Meleys and Rhaenys arriving at Dragonstone. Daemon is ready to mount up for war, and he says,
Make it a son for a son.
Now the title Son for a Son pulls directly from the book, with it being a chapter in the dying of the dragons. As the Black Council sat to consider how to strike back, a raven arrived from Harrenhal. An eye for an eye, a son for a son, Prince Daemon wrote. Lucerys shall be avenged. Now from the off, Daemon realises how dangerous that Vhagar is, and if they don't take her out, then the Greens have a chance. So he basically wants to mount up an assault, but Rhaenys needs to rest. This would probably have consequences down the line, and he should have just killed them all at the coronation. Vhagar! Vhagar! High voltage! Now Meleys is one of the older dragons, and the book says, Rhaenys' own she-dragon Meleys the Red Queen had grown lazy, but remained fearsome when roused. Daemon also talks about how he should be at Harrenhal, forcing them to bend the knee. They have altered things slightly for the show, as that's where he was when Lucerys died. However, they had Daemon remain on Dragonstone and deliver the news about his death personally. In the book, he was the one who sent the raven, whereas in the show, he delivered the news himself. However, there is still doubt until she sees the body, which is something Rhaenys shares. She said she didn't believe her daughter died until she witnessed the remains. So Rhaenyra needs to see a body, and I think this plays upon a passage in the book. There were rumours that Lucerys may have lived, and different accounts of what went down. It said, Arrax fell, broken to be swallowed by the storm-lashed waters of the bay. His head and neck washed up beneath the cliffs below Storm's End 3 days later to make a feast for the crabs and seagulls. Mushroom claims that Prince Lucerys' corpse washed up as well, and tells us that Prince Aemond cut out his eyes and presented them to Lady Maris on a bed of seaweed. But this seems excessive. Some say Vhagar snatched Lucerys off his dragon's back and swallowed him whole. It has even been claimed that the prince survived his fall, swam to safety, but lost all memory of who he was, spending the rest of his days as a simple-minded fisherman, which ever since reading the book, I've hoped that was the one that happened. Then I seen him getting ripped apart 2 years ago, and I was like, he could be alive? No, he's dead. He's dead. He's as dead as this channel is without House of the Dragon. Still though, because of all these accounts, you can understand why Rhaenyra would have doubts. She's of course helped someone fake their death before, and even though they saw the body, you know, appearances aren't all they seem to be. Now the different accounts are because the book in itself isn't even necessarily a story, rather it's just a telling of witness accounts. I do wonder if that's what the tapestry in the intro is a reference to, because this is sort of just a retelling. Now Rhaenys' daughter's death has a sting for Daemon, as he was of course married to her at the time. Rhaenys is taking a more personal view though, whereas Daemon's desperate to get Aemond. Killing Vhagar and him will be the son for a son, but as we see, they take a slightly more subtle approach. Now at this point we join Rhaenyra at Shipbreaker Bay. Running along the east coast of Westeros, the name Shipbreaker is pretty apt. It's known for being extremely dangerous to ships due to the amount of storms that happen there. So Shipbreaker, Countless ships have been buried in its waters, with these storms of course appearing throughout the show. These are what Davos had to navigate during the Siege of Storm's End. We of course also had it popping up last season. This is what Aemond and Lucerys duked it out over, with his body now lying at the bottom of the bay. From here, we then cut to Corlys and meet Alan of Hull. Keep saying that like Alan. Alan! Now he brings up his brother, who we know from the book is called Adam. I will talk about these characters more in the spoiler section, as there's a lot going on with them. Alan talks about the gullet, and Corlys used his ship Sea Snake to choke it during the war. The book says, and so it was decided. Prince Daemon would lead the assault on Harrenhal riding Caraxes. Princess Rhaenyra would remain on Dragonstone until she had recovered her strength. The Valyrian fleet would close off the gullet, sallying forth from Dragonstone and Driftmark to block all shipping entering or leaving Blackwater Bay. Now this is touched upon later in the episode when we get these lines.
I will fly to Harrenhal at your command.
Your Grace, my Lord Husband's blockaded the gullet.
This brought with it a lot of civil unrest because people at King's Landing couldn't get supplies. Thus there was starvation, and the new king was pretty unpopular. Now because of this, Rhaenyra had a strong force beside her, but King's Landing, that was where it really mattered. Cutting to it, we see who's really in charge, with soldiers rocking high tower shields. Greens are everywhere in the core, and they've completely replaced the Targaryen banners that used to be commonplace. Following Arik Cargyle, we see the walls are fortified with scorpions. These giant crossbows were built to slay dragons, and we see them aimed at the sky. However, it's the return of Aemond, who's come on the back of Vhagar. Now we cut to Aegon going to his kids, and yeah, make sure you tell your loved ones you love them while they're still here. Should always hit the thumbs up if you care about someone, I think. Now Jaehaerys isn't here, and he won't be much longer, mate, but he is the next in line for the throne, with Helaena saying he might not want to be king. Does she know? She says that she's afraid, and then brings up how she's scared of the rats. Now you might remember in season 1 that Helaena kept saying about the beast beneath the boards.
Beware the beast beneath the boards.
Your father.
There is a beast beneath the boards.
Now it is possible that this was setting up what was going to happen with Rhaenys at the coronation. She burst forth from underneath, so it is possible. However, due to what she said before, it is possible that this was highlighting taking away a son for a son.
If one possesses a thing, the other will take it away.
Now this was of course referencing the throne going back and forth. Now it is possible that the beast beneath the boards was in relation to Blood and Cheese. That might be a reach, but I thought it was worth bringing up. Either way, rats have been laced throughout King's Landing in the season, with them constantly popping up in season 1. Rats were there to symbolise the rats circling the throne, and now they're coming in the shape of a rat catcher. Subtext is there if you want to see it, but let me know below exactly what you think. Everyone thinks Helena's mental, and she's looking for a rat up a drain pipe, which takes us to Alicent and Criston Cole, their own rat up a drain pipe. Viserys' half-melted face isn't even cold yet, and she's already letting Criston service her. She says, we cannot do it again, but hey, that's a fucking lie. And this really shows Criston's change from season 1 to season 2. There Rhaenyra took his V-card, and he eventually ended up pledging his love to her. Criston took an oath he'd be with no woman, but he ended up breaking this for her. He said the pair should run away, but she ended up rejecting him. She went on to get married, and though she promised they could have fun, it didn't sit well with him. He smashed Joffrey's face in like we all wanted to do in that first Game of Thrones season, and then completely turned against Rhaenyra and was even gonna commit seppuku. That's when Alicent came to him, and now he doesn't mind breaking oaths or her back. Now we then get our first appearance of Cheese, who we catch with one of his traps. This shows how much access he has to the castle and foreshadows what's to come. At the council, we see Jaehaerys messing about, and that Lannister's like, kill him, he's doing me head in. He almost gets forced to do a pony ride, and it's very demeaning. Funny bit of trivia though, I've been rewatching Game of Thrones, and noticed this actor was in season 1 episode 4. Either way, Aegon and Jaehaerys are spoiled little brats, and it really shows how bad things are gonna get. Kids being on the council wasn't uncommon though, and they were expected to come in. In season 1, Otto even wanted Aegon on the council when he was 2, but Viserys thought it was stupid. Can see why, cause the kid's just messing about. Aegon's laughing away though, and watching this twice doesn't sit well with you. The council meeting pulls right out of the book, with them discussing how things were going. It says, yet it must not be thought that the Green Council was sitting idle. Sir Otto Hightower had been busy as well, winning over lords, hiring sellswords, strengthening the defences of King's Landing, and assiduously seeking after other alliances. After the rejection of Grand Maester Orwell's peace overtures, the Hand redoubled his efforts, dispatching ravens to Winterfell and the Eyrie, to Riverrun, White Harbour, Goldtown, Bitterbridge, Fair Isle, and 100 other keeps and castles. Riders gallop through the night to holdings closer to hand to summon their lords and ladies to court to do fealty to King Aegon. Sir Otto also reached out to Dawn, whose ruling Prince Quarren Martell had once warred against Prince Daemon in the Stepstones, but Prince Quarren spurned his offer. Dawn has danced with dragons before, he said. I would sooner sleep with scorpions. Yet Sir Otto was losing the trust of his king, who mistook his efforts for inaction and his caution for cowardice. Septon Eustace tells us of one occasion where Aegon entered the Tower of the Hand and found Sir Otto writing another letter, whereupon he knocked the impots into his grandsire's lap, declaring, "Thrones are won with swords, not quills, spill blood, not ink." Now, in this scene, Otto brings up how he sends ravens by the hour, but Aegon wants to strike fast. At this point, Aemond enters, with Alicent not being too pleased with him. Killing an envoy was seen as a faux pas, and it meant he was known as a kinslayer. This was an accursed name that brought with it a hell of a lot of mistrust. Now, I did wonder if they'd have this passage from the book play out when he returned, but we know Alicent wasn't happy. It says, Aemond Targaryen, who would henceforth be known as Aemond the Kinslayer to his foes, returned to King's Landing, having won the support of Storm's End for his brother Aegon and the undying enmity of Queen Rhaenyra. If he thought to receive a hero's welcome, he was disappointed. Queen Alicent went pale when she'd heard what he'd done, crying, "Mother, have mercy on us all." Nor was Sir Otto pleased. "You only lost one eye," he's reported to have said. "How could you have been so blind?" The king himself did not share their concerns, however. Aegon II welcomed Prince Aemond home with a great feast, hailed him as the true blood of the dragon, and announced that he made a good beginning. Now, that latter part is how we see Aegon in these scenes, with him granting his brother a spot on the council. They also bring up how there's no master of ships, and this is because Corlys has now switched sides. Grand Maester Orwell suggests Dalton Greyjoy, with the Greyjoys of course appearing in the main series. Now, who was allowed there but isn't in the show is Larys the Clubfoot. He seems a bit like he fears defeat, even though he loves defeat. He's killed all those suspected of betraying Alicent and has chosen her new staff personally. However, as we know, he has spies everywhere, and I feel like this is a power play by him. He clearly already knows something's up with Kristen, and is probably a bit jealous that he's not her soulmate. Get it? Soulmate, because your feet have souls. Hey, come on, that was a good one, mate. I do feel like there's suspicion building within her, as we see she wants to be left alone. She's chosen pretty bad company, and is now isolated because of it. All those around her are oath breakers and spies, and this paranoia is going to fester in her mind. Now, who else is alone is Rhaenyra, who gets to confirm that Lucerys is dead. She's lost a child, had a miscarriage, and also lost the throne. We see this echoed in the next scene when Aegon hits the throne room. He's joined by Lord Martin Rayne and also Leon Estamont. They're brand new for the show, with neither appearing in the book. In the throne room, we also see a brand new figurehead being put up on a pillar. Later on, when Blood and Cheese move through the throne room, we can see this is clearly Viserys. Aegon becomes a bit of a people pleaser here, but he's guided into saying no to almost everyone. Kinda sad, as the dude just wanted his sheep back. Lastly though, we have a notable figure from the group who comes in the form of Hugh Hammer. We'll talk about him later on in the spoiler section, but he exemplifies the costs of war. He wants to be paid before the job begins, so he's not going to wait on them 30-day invoices. You know what happens if you run your own business. Aegon is generous again though, with Otto not being too happy. Again, this further showcases the wedge between the pair, with Aegon becoming more and more displeased. Now this is when Larys sinks his teeth in, and he suggests getting rid of him as the Hand. Otto has served 3 kings, and he even got his grandson on the throne. However, this is a game that's all about power plays, which we see reflected in the next scene. In episode 9, Alicent and Otto are working against each other, with them both sending their agents to get Aegon. I love how there's a civil war within a civil war, and it shows how petty the Greens are. This entire thing was because they needed power, and now they're just doing power plays. They want to just wait it out until Aegon gets bored, and then the pair can rule the realm. Alicent went to Viserys fully willing to do her fire festival, but she understands that it's now going to be war. Now, if you're enjoying the video and want to support the channel, then definitely check out our merch store right below the video. We've got 3 House of the Dragon inspired t-shirts on there right now, with our original blacks and also green ones that we dropped in season 1. This civil war's really mounting up, and you can show your allegiance by picking up your team's design. We also have a brand new Dragons Drama and Destiny shirt designed by Aaron S. Bailey. It all goes towards helping videos like this get made, and huge thank you if you've picked one up. Now from here we cut to one of Corlys' ships and see Eric Cargyle. In case you don't remember, Eric and Arik are twins, with a pair being on opposing sides. Discovering Mysaria is a stowaway, she admits to selling secrets to Otto. This is something we saw in episode 9 with the pair meeting so she could get Aegon to him. She got Otto to swear to end the child fighting pits if she gave Aegon up, but I doubt that's actually gone on. Daemon and Mysaria, of course, have had their run-ins in the past, with them initially being lovers. Daemon ran away with her to Dragonstone, and in the book she got pregnant. They changed it for the show, with Daemon just taking the egg. Either way, Eric stands up for her, and he gets some real character development. I can't wait to see it play out with him and his brother, and I imagine that will happen next week or the week after. Haven't seen the trailer for episode 2 as of making this, but you should know by now how it's going to go down. Now, Eric has a bit more to do in the work, with him presenting Rhaenyra with the crown. This is who we cut to in the next scene and see she returns home. Now, the book had the crown being taken by Sir Stephen Darklyn, who we see as she walks to the painted table. This was a key piece in Aegon's conquest, with it being an entire map of Westeros. It allowed Aegon to plan out his assaults and get a top-level view of what he wanted to conquer. We see it in comparison to what the Greens have, with that basically just being a board. Rhaenyra also walks past a large dragon skull as she enters. I'm not sure exactly who this is, but potentially it's Meraxes. We do know which dragon skulls end up on the island later down the line, but that would spoil the show, and at this point they're obviously still alive. Daemon ends up then going to Mysaria, and we cut to Jace returning home. Now, you might notice that Rhaenyra is wearing a braid around the side and back of her hair. This is a nod to her idol and ancestor Visenya. Episode 10 had that agonizing scene with her giving birth, and we learned that this baby was going to be called Visenya as well. The book says the issues were thought to be brought on by stress caused by not only losing her dad, but also the fact the throne had been taken. Visenya was one of the key figures in establishing the Targaryen dynasty, and this led to them ruling the realm. This is her way of paying homage to the past, whereas with Aegon, he does something similar. The guy is wearing the Conqueror's crown, but this braid, it's a more subtle way to carry on the legacy. Now, they have altered things a lot with Jace, as we learn about what happened with Lady Jane and Cregan. Lady Jane's been mentioned in the show before, with Daemon bringing her up in episode 5.
After my niece's wedding, I plan to fly to the Eyrie and petition Lady Jane myself. Perhaps I'll see you there, Sir Gerald.
In regards to her, the book says, meanwhile, a very different story was playing out of the east, where Jacaerys Velaryon descended upon the Eyrie on his young dragon Vermax to win the Vale of Arryn for his mother. The Maiden of the Vale, Lady Jane Arryn, was 35, 20 years his senior. Never wed, Lady Jane had reigned over the Vale since the death of her father and elder brothers at the hands of the Stonecrow of the Hills when she was 3. Mushroom tells us that this famous maiden was in truth a highborn harlot with a voracious appetite for men, and gives us a salacious tale of how she offered Prince Jacaerys the allegiance of the Vale only if he could bring her to climax with his tongue. Septon Eustace repeats the widespread rumour that Jane Arryn preferred the intimate companionship of other women, and then goes on to say it was not true. In this instance, we must be grateful for Grand Maester Munkin's true telling, for he alone confines himself to the high hall of the Eyrie rather than its bedchambers. Now, in the end, Jane saw some kinship in Rhaenyra, which is why she sided with her. In this world of men, we women must band together. Now, it turned out that her brother had tried to replace her, and she'd banished him to the sky cells that we saw in the main show. Though she didn't like how Daemon had mistreated his previous wife, she saw a lot of kinship in Rhaenyra. The book then said, "The Vale and its knights shall stand with her, if her grace will grant me one request." When the prince asked what that might be, she answered, "Dragons. I have no fear of armies. Many and more have broken themselves against my bloody gate, and the Eyrie is known to be impregnable. But you have descended on us from the sky, as Queen Visenya once did during the conquest, and I was powerless to halt you. I mislike feeling powerless. Send me dragon riders." Now, we also completely skipped over what happened at Westeros. I'm not going to read out all that in the book as it goes on for quite a bit, but Jace had his own little love nest. During his tour, it's thought he encountered Sarah Snow, who's said to be Rickon's bastard daughter and Cregan's half-sister. It is said that the pair fell in love and were married in the Godswood. Vermax also apparently laid a clutch of eggs, but both of these have been thought of as being made up. Vermax is a dude, and at this point, no one thought that dragons could change sex. It might be like some Jurassic Park thing, but it has been disputed. The book states, whilst it is true that determining the sex of a living dragon is nigh on an impossible task, no other source mentions Vermax producing so much as a single egg, so it must be assumed that he was a male. Septon Barth's speculation that dragons change sex at need, being as mutable as flame, is too ludicrous to consider. but life finds a way. Now, there also exists no records of Sarah Snow, so that's probably why they completely skip over her in the show. I was wondering in the build-up to this if they'd tie Sarah Snow with Jon Snow, but alas, it's Jon No. Jace talks about how they've swore their allegiances, but it's not necessarily a win. The book says, the North was too remote to be much import in the fight, the council judged. By the time the Starks gathered their banners and marched south, the war might well be over. The book also tells us that he briefly visited Sisterton along with White Harbour. There he swore Joffrey's hand in marriage once the war was over. Anyway, as we play out the funeral, we see Alicent going to the Sept. This is a place where she and Rhaenyra laugh together, and it showcases how distant the pair are. Playing these scenes alongside each other is really harrowing, and it deals heavily with loss. Alicent lights candles for those who've fallen, and we see Luke's possessions being burned. This includes his robes, toy horse and his cloak, which he donned throughout Season 1. The funeral echoes several of the ones we've seen before, with it all calling back to that one in Episode 1. Now, the reason Daemon isn't at the funeral is because he's sneaking into King's Landing. That takes us into the blood and cheese section, with us meeting Blood at the gate. We see he still retains his gold cloak, which is a change up for the show. Now, for this bit, I'm going to talk about how the book describes things, which should add some extra context for the episode. It says, let it not be forgotten, in his youth, Daemon Targaryen had been the prince of the city. His face and laugh familiar to every cut purse, whore and gambler in Flea Bottom. The prince still had friends in the low places of King's Landing and followers amongst the Gold Cloaks. Unbeknownst to King Aegon, the Hand or Queen Dowager, he had allies that could as well, even on the Green Council. And one other go-between, a special friend he trusted utterly, who knew the wine sinks and rat pits that festered in the shadow of the Red Keep, as well as Daemon himself once had, and moved easy through the shadows of the city. To this pale stranger he reached out now by secret ways to set a terrible vengeance into motion. Now, it's important to bear in mind that both he and Rhaenyra were extremely popular. She was known as the realm's delight in her youth, and he was the heir before Rhaenyra got it. So she has a giant foothold in the city, with the high towers not really being as popular. Now, the book then went on to describe the hiring of Blood and Cheese and how Mysaria was involved in it. Yeah, she's a captive, whereas there she was in the city and helped Daemon out. It says, amidst the stews of Flea Bottom, Prince Daemon's go-between found suitable instruments. One had been a sergeant in the city watch, big and brutal. He had lost his gold cloak for beating a whore to death whilst in a drunken rage. The other was a rat catcher in the Red Keep. They are remembered, would that they were not, as Blood and Cheese. Now in it says Cheese knew the Red Keep better than the shape of his own cock. This is something he says in the episode when Daemon first meets him.
Better than the shape of my own cock.
Now, as a rat catcher, he'd worked through a lot of the tunnels built by Maegor the Cruel. These appeared earlier in the show, with Rhaenyra using them to sneak out and meet Daemon. During episode 4, he left a bag in her room, and this contained a map of them. They of course led directly to hers, with most of the keep being accessible through them. Cutting to Criston and Aemond, we see the pair strategizing while they accept that war's inevitable. Aemond says he feels like he's blamed for starting the war, even though that's not the case. Criston is basically his mother's new boyfriend, and here they talk about Alicent's weakness. She still cares about Rhaenyra, and I wonder if we'll see the pair meet again. In episode 9, the reason Alicent wanted to get Aegon first is because she didn't want him to order Rhaenyra's death. The pair shouldn't really be making plans though, which Otto points out. Again, it really shows the fracture in the houses and how there's wheels within wheels. Daemon wasn't given permission to go hire Blood and Cheese, but this is what led to him doing it. Otto thinks that Aemond's unruly, but in truth we know he's not. Vhagar ignored him and attacked Lucerys, which he was clearly shocked at. Vhagar's had multiple riders and is also the realm's oldest dragon. So it's not paying attention to this kid, and it really isn't Aemond's fault. Also, I wonder how much of this Otto actually heard. The pillars and the way he comes up are akin to where Rhaenyra was standing during Season 1. She eavesdropped on the Strongs there, and yeah, Otto might have done the same thing here. Now from this point we see Blood and Cheese moving through the castle. I love how earlier in the episode, around the 26:44 mark, how you can catch Cheese moving about the castle. There he refuses to enter the throne room, which could show some of his hesitation here. Just having him walking about the show at several points really shows some great planning on the production team's behalf. The book says, using a forgotten passageway, Cheese led Blood into the heart of the castle, unseen by any god. Some say their quarry was the king himself, but Aegon was accompanied by the king's god wherever he went. and even Cheese knew of no way in and out of Maegor's holdfast save over the drawbridge that spanned the dry moat and its formidable iron spikes. Now as they move through the castle, they come across King Aegon, and he says he needs to be Aegon the Strong, which I know a couple of strong boys myself, eh? What the book then dictates is the Tower of the Hand was less secure, and it's here they managed to evade the gods. These guys aren't good, and Cheese even kicks the dog. This is a trope that's typically done in westerns called a kick the dog moment. It basically spells out who the bad guy is, which hadn't figured it out yet. In fiction, the kick the dog moment's described as being used to make us lose all sympathy for a character, and yeah, I'm going to do that. Now the show changes things up a lot, and in the work they went to the Queen's room. There it says, "The Tower of the Hand was less secure. The two men crept through the walls, bypassing the spearmen posted at the tower doors. Sir Otto's rooms were of no interest to them. Instead, they slipped into his daughter's chambers, one floor below. Queen Alicent had taken up residence there after the death of King Viserys, when her son Aegon moved into Maegor's holdfast with his own queen. Once inside, Cheese bound and gagged the Dowager Queen, whilst blood strangled her bedmaid." Now they do come across one in the episode, though they don't end up doing this. I feel like she's going to be an eyewitness next time, and her escaping forces them to rush. The book then says, "Then they settled down to wait, for they knew it was custom of Queen Helaena to bring her children to see their grandmother every evening before bed. Blind to her danger, the Queen appeared as dusk was settling over the castle, accompanied by her 3 children. Jaehaerys and Jaehaera were 6, Maelor 2. As they entered the apartments, Helaena was holding his little hand and calling out her mother's name. Blood barred the door and slew the Queen's guardsman, whilst Cheese appeared to snatch up Maelor. 'Scream and you all die,' Blood told her grace. Queen Helaena kept her calm, it is said. 'Who are you?' she demanded of the 2. 'Debt collectors,' said Cheese. 'An eye for an eye, a son for a son. We only want the one to square things. Won't hurt the rest of you fine folks, not one little hair. Which one you want to lose, your grace?' Now in the show, they grab Helaena in the kids' room with Alicent being oblivious to them. The work says Helaena pleaded them to take her instead, but they simply replied, 'A wife's not a son.' In the show, she tries to trade her necklace, but they take it anyway. They then said they'd kill them all if she didn't choose, which led into a Sophie's Choice. It's basically a Sophie's Choice but flipped. Now in the book, they told her to hurry up or Blood would R with their little girl. The book then says, 'Pick,' he said, 'or we'll kill them all.' On her knees, weeping, Helaena named her youngest Maelor. Perhaps she thought the boy was too young to understand, or perhaps it was because her older boy Jaehaerys was King Aegon's firstborn and heir, next in line to the Iron Throne. 'You hear that, little boy?' Cheese whispered to Maelor. 'Your mama wants you dead.' Then he gave Blood a grin, and the hulking swordsman slew Prince Jaehaerys, striking off the boy's head with a single blow. The Queen began to scream. Now, they did show some restraint for the scene in the show, but it's still really messed up. In the book, little Maelor was just 2, but Helaena worried he might still understand. She'd basically just picked him to die, but whether he was aware or not was something that she wrestled with. Just knowing how helpless they are, it really messes with you, especially when they go back and forth over who's who. That caused a lot of issue in the work, whereas here, I think they'll stem the issues out from her giving him up. Aegon loved the guy, and he might be annoyed that she chose to save their daughter when he probably would have wanted the son to stay. This is a man's world, and sons are seen as the most important, and yeah, I feel like it's going to cause problems. Rushing to her mother's room, we find Alicent and Sir Criston, and end with her announcing Blood and Cheese have killed the boy. So, big episode, and that blood and cheese scene, that's been something I imagine ever since reading the book, so it's been in my head for a while now. I do feel like they pulled their punches a bit, but you know, obviously when you imagine something for so long, it's difficult to live up to it. So what I'm going to do is judge the show for what it is, rather than what I want it to be. I still felt this was a really strong return, with it perfectly getting us back into this world. The Winterfell opening scene was really solid and felt like a trip down memory lane. It then really painted out stuff I never thought we were going to get with certain characters. Seeing Aegon being a nice dad and also trying to be good to the people, it made this ending hit even harder. Just feel kinda bad for the Greens, mate. What do you mean I've always been Team Green? But nah, just a complex show. I really don't know who I want to win, and it's going to be heartbreaking as we go through it. Now for the next part of the video, I want to talk about certain characters in the episode where things might get spoiled for you. That's mainly about Alan of Hull and also Hugh Hammer. I won't talk about the consequences of Blood and Cheese, so yeah, that's kind of your general overview of what's about to come. Only you can decide if that's too spoilery, and if it is, then I'll see you next week. Thank you again for joining us today, as I know these videos are a big chunk of your life, so I appreciate it. Anyway, Alan is an extremely important character. In the scene he talked about heirs with Corlys and even presented him his blade. The irony though is that Lucerys wasn't his heir, as he was a strong boy. Who is though is Alan, with him being one of Corlys's bastards. He was the one who pulled him from the sea and clearly cares about him. Now down the line, Rhaenyra's side start wanting dragon riders and they look to people like Alan. You need to stop saying Alan. Alan! It's believed that only those with highborn Targaryen or Valyrian blood can ride them, and this is why they recruit these dragon seeds. Whether they believe that or not is another thing entirely, but this keeps up the idea of their legend. If the peasants believe that only they can ride dragons, then they'll continue to see them as gods. Corlys being indebted to his son and actually getting a relationship with him is something that I'm really excited to see, and I can't wait to see this father and son stuff developing. Now another dragon seed is Hugh Hammer, who we met in the throne room. We're not fully sure of his entire lineage, but he is thought to descend from Aemond Targaryen. It adds in this idea of heirs and birthrights, which is something that the show is of course built upon. They all kind of have a claim to the throne, and it's going to add in some interesting dynamics. Anyway, that's our breakdown, and thank you again for watching it. I'd of course love to hear your thoughts, so make sure you drop them in the comments below. Please drop a like on the video, and huge shout outs again to My Heritage for sponsoring today's breakdown. Just a reminder that you can get free delivery over at their site by clicking the link in the description. Also, if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please consider clicking the join button. You'll get early access to videos every week. It goes a massive way to helping us out, and yeah, it just means we can do these more in-depth breakdowns. You know, I can take longer to write them and then host them. The editors get more time because we've got more of them now, and yeah, it just means that we're putting out better videos. So huge thank you to everyone who's done it. You know, you guys really mean a lot to me, and couldn't be doing it without you, so thank you for letting me do this. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got another breakdown on screen, so definitely head over there right after this. With that out of the way, huge thank you for sticking through the video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.